Seth, are you ready? Yep. I'd like to welcome everybody out for our commission meeting on this November 14th, 2016. If you'll please rise and repeat the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item number 1 on the agenda is approval of minutes. I don't remember seeing any minutes.
We're good.
Okay. Item number 2, Miss Carbon County, Madison. If you'd like to come to the mic and state your name for the record and tell us a little bit about your platform, a little bit about you, and how what you liked about what's happening so far.
Okay. I am Madison Barola, and I represent our great community as Miss Carbon County 2017. The Miss Carbon County organization has served our community for over 60 years. We are a branch of the Miss America organization and do not wear this crown because it is beautiful, but because it stands for something. You'll notice that I have 4 points, and they symbolize service, style, scholarship, and success. Our organization offers personal and professional opportunities for local women to share their talent, be involved in their community, and promote a service platform of their choosing. We are continuing to grow and improve. My service platform is called Mission Impossible Choose Your Future, and I chose to create this service platform because I wanted to create a positive support system for every child and teen in our community, because I feel like sometimes these children and teens don't have a support system at home, and all they need is guidance, whether it's from a teacher, a coach, a friend, a mentor, or a family member, in order to choose their goals and be successful. So as my goal as Miss Carbon County is to create those positive support systems through mentoring programs that I am hoping to set up in our high schools. I plan to volunteer as much as I can in elementary schools. I am actually already partnered with Kiwanis, and they raise thousands of dollars for children in our community, and it's been super awesome to be involved with them. So I just hope for big things with my platform this year. The county commissioners and community have been so supportive of the Miss Carbon County program. I would like to again ask for financial assistance for this amazing organization. I will be representing this county at the Miss Utah pageant in July 12th through the 17th at Capitol Theater in Salt Lake City, Utah. I have begun preparations and have worked very hard to be prepared for this amazing opportunity. The state competition entrance fee is up to $1,570 per contestant, plus $400 for our little Miss Carbon County to participate, perform, and be involved during the week at Miss Utah. You can see the breakdown of costs on the shared invoice. We would like to ask for any support that can be given to help us accomplish our goals and represent our community well at the state level. I would also like to ask for your support for our scholarship fund. All our scholarships are based on donations from the community. We hope to raise or obtain up to $3,000 of scholarship funds per year to give to our royalty. By giving a scholarship fund to this annual event, you'll be supporting the Miss Carbon County organization and helping us provide scholarships for these young women who put their heart and soul into serving our community and assisting at local events. I believe that this organization does so much for our county, and these young women deserve to have cash scholarships awarded to continue their education. The scholarship you donate will go towards our next year's pageant held in October 2017 and will be awarded to our Miss Carbon County 2018 and our first and second attendance. I hope that we can count on you to help support our young women of Carbon County. We would also ask that you consider setting aside a separate amount of funds for the building and maintenance of our Miss Carbon County float. As a representative of Carbon County, we feel it is important to look our best when attending and participating in local parades. We do participate in more than 6 parades each year. It has been quite a while since we have had a designated float for the Carbon County Royalty, and we feel it is time that changed. As a royalty, we will be responsible for creating, repairing, cleaning, and preparing the float for all parades. We just need the funds to help make this happen. We have shared with you an estimate of how much we will need to build a permanent float for this organization. We would love to represent Carbon County to the best of our ability. Thank you.
Madison, I don't know if you have the information, and if not, maybe Kylie can help, but in the past, because all the funds that you're requesting far exceeded what we've been able to budget for, how have you accomplished those things in the past as the pageant has gone forward?
We've just done different fundraisers and things, and we haven't really had a great float. Like, we've just kind of had to find a trailer from the community or from a member of the organization and just kind of decorate it as best we can. It is hard to raise funds, but we've done our best, but I think that we can do a lot better.
So with the other pageant expenses and scholarship and so forth, how much have you been able to raise community support?
Since I've taken over just this year, we raised, it was close to $3,000 just for our scholarships. That I had the contestants go out and ask for donations for the scholarship fund. So they were able to raise that money, and we were able to award scholarships for our queen and our first and second attendants.
And with the float, where would you store that if it becomes a permanent, permanent into the future? Because that.
We've been talking to Frank Horry, and he's been trying to work on that for us. Or if we're able to just get like a nice kind of boat cover type thing, that it would be able to withstand the winter. So we're looking at both options.
And do you have a trailer that you could mount it on?
The fairgrounds have let us, have told us that we are able to use that as a permanent float that they use for the Helper Light Parade. And so they've donated that to us and said that we can use it for the whole year and make a permanent float on that for years to come. So.
Another question, Madison, as you've gone through that process, when we talk about the need for funding, how did that go for you? I'm assuming you were involved with the fundraising this last year. How was your success? Did you receive
Raising
good
for the
support?
pageant?
Yeah, raising for their pageant.
Yeah, I think a lot of people in the community are very supportive of this organization. I'm very thankful for that. I don't think that this organization would be as big as it is if we didn't have the support we have behind us.
Okay, very good.
Kylie, you mentioned that, speaking of this year, that you stepped in and started helping. Do you feel that this year you've already raised substantially more than years past?
Oh yeah. Before, they only gave the USU Eastern scholarships, and so the girls that won those, they were only able to use it for that college. And I wanted the girls that tried out to be able to expand that and be able to go to any college that they'd like. So that's why I started the cash scholarship fund, so that they can get the USU Eastern scholarship that USU Eastern provides, but also get the cash scholarship, so they can go anywhere that they would like to go.
Do you feel that you'll have equally successful fundraising ventures in the future?
I hope so.
Similar to this year?
I hope so.
And would you continue to allocate that money towards scholarships, or would some of that also be able to be used for the actual Utah pageant?
It depends on how much we raise. If we're able to get up to that $3,000 that I want for the queen and the first and second attendants, I think that if we were to get over that amount, that I would probably allow some of it to go towards the Miss Utah organization. So.
The float, the county trailer that's normally out at the fairgrounds that has been allowed for your use, what type of money outlay are you looking at for making it into the float that you envision?
So I sent Sandy an email this morning with did you guys get that with the breakdown of costs? So, and I've been involved with pageants for about 10 years now, so I've kind of helped building floats and everything. And it can range anywhere from, especially starting out, because you have to build the frames and everything, can range from $1,500 up to $2,000 to get it started. And then it's just kind of more maintaining it just up to that point. So that, yeah, it's just the initial building it and getting to where we need to be, that's the hardest part.
Well, Commissioners, I'd like to be supportive the very best that we can in this effort. I don't know, I guess what I would do is make a motion and see if we need to consider it or amend it. But I would make a motion that we consider funding up to $1,500 for the registration fee. That would be $500 more than what we've done in the past with those costs of the pageant itself going up. And then ask if you would go about your fundraising, leave the door open that we might need to consider something else later in the year. I know that that only puts that $1,500 into our budget for next year, but maybe we can set a little bit aside in our miscellaneous. But I'd like to see what you could do in raising the rest of it for the float. Yeah, we can't really count the cost of the trailer, but it does have a value and so forth. But anyway, that's where I would make a motion that we go tonight, recognizing your hard work in the past and what you've shared with us and what you've been able to do.
We have a motion.
You know, I think that would be us, that would show us increasing our support, as well as with the additional costs. We'd also like to potentially see the desire from the community members to maybe help out with the float a little bit as we're providing the trailer, similar to what Commissioner Potter mentioned. So I'll go ahead and second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And keep us posted.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time and service you give to our community. Please contact us if you have any events that we can assist with.
Thank you.
Thank you. And congratulations.
Thank you.
Item number 3, Hilltop Subdivision Road, Gina Gagan. Believe we have an update today?
We do, yeah.
Okay.
Commissioners, we had worked pretty hard on a lot of the things that you had asked us to look at and Curtis has asked us to look at. And we were actually kind of thinking that we would have the public hearing and be able to close it and maybe get into the final process, but I don't believe that was done or advertised that way. So I think we're probably just here for a little report now to back to you or answer any questions and let you know what we've accomplished.
Thank you. Go ahead,
You want to go
Gina.
through that, Gina?
Sure, yeah, I can. So when we were here almost a year ago, I can't quite remember the date, but close to a year ago, we asked that we have a list of all your concerns so that we could address those instead of, you know, each meeting, another item coming to light. So after that meeting, we met with Curtis Page and got a list of everything that we hope will address your concerns, and we've done that. So I'll just go down that list from the meeting with Curtis. The first item was to address the road alignment. At that meeting, we obtained some new information. It was the request from Price River Water that there be 3 feet from the edge of the asphalt to the edge of the water line. And that honestly has taken, I think the board meeting with Price River Water was in September, so that took the bulk of the time. But we ultimately ended up with a compromise. They allowed us, actually in one case, to actually go over the water line so that the curve wasn't too sharp for a safety issue. So we were able to check that one off the list, and we have a letter from Price River Water to that effect, and it was addressed to, the original letter was addressed to Carbon County Commission, attention Casey Hope's chairman, so I hope you have a copy of that. I can give you a copy of my version of that, or my copy of that if you need it. So that was the first item, is to get a road alignment that would work for Price River Water. The second issue was to resolve the right-of-way. Going to this new standard, the right-of-way needs to be increased from the current 36-foot easement to a 50-foot easement. And we worked with Christian Briner on that issue, and he drafted a letter for us that goes through that and shows that the homeowners understand the issue. It's a letter of intent. We have, we have copies from 14 of the 17 homeowners. The two, so we need 17 total. 2 of the ones that were missing are just in transit. We expect them, but they didn't get here before the meeting. And then the third one is from Jim and Billeen Henry, and I've given a copy of that letter to Billeen Henry, but we don't have a signed copy back yet. So that was the second issue on our list of items from Curtis. The third issue was to address the drainage. And this issue is not fully addressed in the sense that we don't have a completed drainage study, a hydrology study, but we did meet with Curtis, and he gave us the criteria that needs to be designed to, and that's factored into our budget. So the criteria is to identify all the different watersheds that apply to the area, and then the drainage needs to be designed to handle a 25-year, 1-hour rainfall with no overtopping. So that was the standard that Curtis gave us, which is very helpful. So we had some kind of guidance in addressing that issue. The fourth issue was to validate the subgrade structure. There were questions as to whether the existing road was adequate for meeting the county road standards, so that, because we ultimately want to turn this over to the county once we've brought it up to your standard. We did that. We had Johansson and Tuttle come in and do testing, validate the subgrade structure, and Curtis can better answer this because the 2 engineers were talking, and so, but Johansson and Tuttle found everything was fine except for the very end of the road, and that's the underlying soil changes a little bit towards the end, and so they've added some road base, to address it. So it's addressed, but other than that, at the very end, the subgrade structure they found was adequate for the county road purposes.
In that, just as a part of that, they also recommended that it did not need to be lifted or even scarified, and was sound enough to go on top of, which was nice. But they've actually increased the. They said that the substructure didn't need to be lifted or scarified because we may not be able to compact it as good as it's compacted now, but that in those areas, rather than taking out what is there, they added the additional that Gina's talking about, so that they've so that whole item on the list came out well. And where there was any issue at all, they've decided to increase the amount of road base on the top, so they've solved it kind of 2 ways.
So then the final item that Curtis gave us on our list of things to do was to obtain an estimate by an engineer, and Johansson and Tuttle did that for us. We met with Curtis, I can't remember the actual date, but mid-October, and went over that with him. And at the end of that meeting, my question to him was, are we now ready to go to the commissioners? Because if you're not satisfied, then certainly we need to keep working on this. And so his answer was yes, that is why we are here. And I'll let him speak to that. The one item as we went through the engineer's estimate that he had concern about, and again, I'll let him speak, and I think that we agree with, is in the end, when we added the cost, because there are places where we have to build completely new road to meet the Price River water requirement. There are places where we do have to shift the road, and then to add the additional untreated base course to address the issue at the very end, that does add cost, and it leaves us with only a $2,200 contingency, which is not an adequate contingency for a project of this size. Right. And so that's an issue that does still need to be addressed. But those were the items on our checklist, and I think that we've done everything we can to address them adequately, and we'd be happy to answer any additional questions.
Gina, what was the estimate that came back?
So the final estimate, which is changed from, if we compare the scope of work from at the point in time when we had our last meeting, the Johansson and Tuttle estimate is $466,647. And then we add the additional excavation and subgrade structure for the new road that needs to be built, and then additional untreated base course. That adds $92,000 to the 466, and then the additional engineering to do the hydrology and to engineer the new road, that adds almost $40,000. So our total, the original scope of work plus the new expanded scope to shift the road at Prywide's request and add untreated base course at Johansson and Tuttle's recommendation brings the new total to $597,756.
And that's with the 22,000 contingency in it then?
2,200.
Or 2,200, I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
So that needs to go up with the contingency then.
So typically the contingencies are 10 to 20%, somewhere in that range. Is that my understanding, Curtis?
You better, come on in.
It's pretty typical to have 15% contingency when you go into a project of this scope. And particularly more so with this one, just because until we have the final design, until we have the hydrology study complete to see what drainage treatments need to be in place, we'll definitely want to have a contingency that's reasonable. So I think that 15% is reasonable. So that would be my recommendation.
So 15% gets us close to 700,000.
15%, would increase it by what, 90?
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's already at 600. All right. What would be any concerns of bringing it up that high? What would be the end payment to each user?
There are concerns getting it that high, and we didn't know for sure if they're, based on the advertisement for the public hearing, if there was an option to even go that high to begin with. So I think we probably need that question answered. There was one other item in here that they also added, because when they added the extra 3 inches of base, and they had 3 on there already, plus 3 inches of asphalt, we had 9-inch raised on the entire road. So this also includes approaches off each of the roads to the width of the right-of-way on all the driveways, which was a benefit to everybody, but it was an additional cost as well.
I don't remember what the numbers were from the original public hearing, but it was set at a certain level. Christian, maybe you've got that, or we'll have to research it, because it was set at a base, plus there was some leeway, and then I think
not to exceed a certain amount.
not to exceed, and then if it did, then it was a matter of whether the project was still viable. So I think that's a very good question that has to be answered at this point. And I don't have those numbers. I didn't pull them out of the minutes, or There were. Well, I don't know in the advertisement if there were, but in the public hearing there were definitely numbers. And
we're hopeful also that this is very conservative, even on the high side. The estimate had 5 times the amount of mobilization, 25,000, than Nielsen Construction quoted at 5,000. And a lot of some of the other factors, including the hydrology study, is also based on a percentage. So if the bids came in, or if the project was a little bit less, some of these numbers could go down. So we're feeling like this was a safe sort of high side number.
I think we'd have to resolve any issues as far as those original numbers, because we may have to readdress that. Because there was some from the entire group at that point in time discussion on if it reached a certain level, we weren't sure we wanted to go forward. So that may have already been addressed by the group. The other thing, while we're looking at this, and Curtis, did we take care of those items that we've had them address?
So Gina kept that list from the meeting, and every time we would meet, she would review it to make sure that I knew that that's all we were talking about. No, but it was right, and it's good. I'm satisfied that they have met my initial concerns. I think that going forward, I mean, because it's the whole, how much do you put into the design before you know if the bond's feasible? I mean, there has to be a balance struck there somewhere. Now, I think they've done enough to see, okay, how much will this cost? Now they can see if there's support for it, and if that bond is viable. And at the point where we have a final design and we have a final hydrology, so that we know everything that's going to go into the project, then we'll have a refined estimate. Maybe it won't change. Hopefully not. But if it does, then we revisit it again and see if we still have a project. And that's kind of how I see this going.
The other question I have, and I glanced through the letters that were sent out, but I'm assuming that as we went forward in a public hearing, we would have to give descriptions of the property that was being allocated to this road from the homeowners. So I'm not sure if that was part of what came back tonight, Gina, or not.
Yes and no. So the letters have like the lot number or perhaps the parcel number, but they do not have the description of the actual easement. The reason for that, it's just the chicken and an egg. This whole thing is just that, which do you handle first?
Right.
The center line is pretty well set. However, because we don't have final engineering, it could adjust. Should the center line adjust, then the easements would need to be redone. So it's a letter of intent that shows the homeowners understand and support the need, or support might not be the right word, but they understand and they agree to expand
the footprint on it.
Yeah, from the 35 to the 50. And then it says that at a later point, once we have the final center line and we can draw up final legal descriptions, then they will come back and sign that final document. But it's really intended to be a show of understanding and agreement to the need to expand that easement as opposed to the final document itself.
So it specifically says 25 feet from the center line is what they're willing to do. And that's assuming on both sides of the road they're willing to do that. If somebody, you don't get every single agreement back, then it could be that 25 feet from the center line in one section isn't going to work if the guy across the street isn't going to give up the same amount necessary.
Okay.
So, but it does, to that extent, that's how specific it is. It's not, it doesn't have a full description, a survey description of what's going to be given. I'd probably have to talk to Ben to see to what extent, to Ben and Eric Johnson to see to what extent that's actually necessary.
To have a legal description at the end.
Yeah.
I think we
I mean, I think we need it at the end, but do we need it before we approve it, I guess is my thought. I don't know that you need it before you approve it.
Oops.
Sorry. That's the understanding that we've been operating under, because we've already invested several $1,000s of homeowners' money to get to this point, but we need to know that the bond is going to go forward before we invest any more, which is why we took this approach, which was to show the support of the homeowners, but not spend the money to the surveyor and to draw up the legal descriptions before we know that the bond is going forward. So I would hope that at this point that's adequate to approve the bond. But we do all understand that ultimately the final legal description does need to be prepared, and we all need to come in and sign that.
Commissioners, I did pull the numbers. It looked like the initial amount in the notice of intent went out as $510,000, and it proposed keeping a reserve fund in addition to that of another 10% on top. So that's about
560,000, and we're now at 700. Okay.
So the question is, do we have to re-advertise? Do we have to start this over with a new amount? I don't know. I saying that's for sure, but I think we might have to give out, maybe do an amended notice of intention as that new number, if you decide that's the number you want to go with.
What's the earliest that you could re-advertise and get that moving?
When we initially advertised, we did it 4 weeks. My microphone's not working, so. All right. If we have to re-advertise it, I think we need to re-advertise it for an additional 4 weeks. If we don't re-advertise it, I think what you could do is, and what I was going to recommend that you do, even if you don't have to re-advertise it, is to put it back on the agenda for the first meeting in January, to close the public hearing, if we don't have to re-advertise everything.
Advertise it that way then, so that we had a final, with the open public hearing that we have continued, close it out in January, or have the new one in January based on the new numbers, depending on what your research shows.
Correct.
Okay.
And so I think we could, I could probably get hold of Eric Johnson this week and just confirm that and make sure. I mean, I know everybody's anxious to get it decided immediately and done, but if we foul up the scheduling of the dates,
Right.
you're gonna be a lot more mad than you.
No,
are
we're
right now.
with you.
So I think we just need to be precise on that. I think I need to make sure we're not messing that up.
So does that date a workable date, the first commission meeting in January?
That would give us the time.
So I guess I'm not clear what we'll accomplish on that date. For sure, close the public hearing.
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
So we're not sure what, or I need to know for sure what the process is gonna be. It may be that all we have to do is to close the public hearing.
Okay.
That may
And
be
not
all we have to
re-advertise.
do.
Yeah.
And simply but if we are closing the public hearing, we do need to advertise that we're closing the public hearing. And what I'm saying is, if that's all we have to do is close the public hearing and take a vote, then I'm recommending we advertise that and have that done at the first meeting in January. But if I'm wrong and we have to send out a new notice of intent and re-advertise the public hearing from the beginning, I'm still recommending we do it in January, but I think it has to run for 4 weeks prior to that.
So
And
is,
it probably would be the same date anyway.
Yeah, yeah,
I
that'd
think
be good.
probably could get it in the same, have it on the same date anyway.
So our January 4th commission meeting. Well, that'd be my motion, that we look at the January 4th day as either the time that we will close the current public hearing and take any final comments and votes and vote at that point in time, or we will have re-advertised with the new amounts and hold the public hearing on that night, the same night. So one or the other.
That sounds good.
Like a workable plan? Okay. We have a motion?
I just have one more question. There was a point at which it was not sustainable, the project. I can't remember at what expense that was. We had that discussion when we were here last. Do you guys recall?
And that may have evolved some as well. Originally, when we came in with the 440, we had huge support for it. When we talked about it being 500 plus 10% or even 20%, is the way I remember it, up into the 600,000 range. That's kind of what everybody's been considering now. To push it up to these levels, I think is far enough that we need to re-ask, or at least it needs to be known that it could be that high to make sure it's there. Going through this process, there's been a real learning experience, which has been great for all of us, because we've almost learned that no matter what we do, sooner or later it's going to cost us that much money anyway. If we were to keep the road and continue to try to maintain it ourselves, there's just a matter of time before we're there anyway, still with the dirt road and still with the liability of owning the road. So I'm anticipating that there'll be real good support.
So as far as between now and January, you would probably, I would imagine, in your association meetings, discuss the 600 to 690 possibility.
You bet, and especially if we find out that we don't have to re-advertise for a new one, we'll come back all of us feeling good that there's good support and we're still there, or not. If it changes for everybody at those numbers, I guess we need to represent everybody.
Thank you.
And the hope would be that you could come in at that 600,000.
Yes.
All the bids work in, and,
Yeah.
and the contingency isn't spent, and then you're only paying on the smaller amount. So
Yeah, because it really could come in considerably less. To me, there's enough wiggle room for almost $100,000 there that it could play with.
yeah,
And a little bit of follow-up. When I went to Clay Holbrook, when we were kind of challenged last time to figure out how we were going to get this property kind of deeded over, or what process, does it really need to be surveyed at this point? How's this going to work? His idea was if you set the center line, we can take care of it off the center line, even to the point of being able to record property. And so when it went back to Christian, his letter, I don't even think they communicated. His letter almost mirrored what Clay had said, and Clay felt good about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I just think we probably want to double check that with our county surveyor and with Curtis, but that was my thought as well.
Good.
Just simply a center line, a distance from center line, we know what the center line is. It's probably sufficient for, as far as I'm concerned, but again, I'm not a surveyor, so we'll check with our county
You bet,
surveyor on
yeah.
that, but that was my instinct as well.
Perfect.
okay. We have a motion on the floor.
And we have a second?
We have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you. I think you're up again, Gina. Okay. Item number 4, consideration of recommendation from Economic Development Subcommittee for approval of RFP award for economic leakage study. Tammy Ursenbach and Gina Gagan.
Do you want me to introduce myself? I just wanted to introduce what we're talking about. About 2 months ago, 3 months ago, I can't even remember, we were in front of you to request to send out an RFP for a special leakage, not a retail leakage study, but an economic leakage study. So what do we have in our county that we're losing to some other place, whether it be to online, whether it be over the mountain, locally, out of state? What are we losing that we could be bringing back possibly to this area? And so we send out the RFP, and we have a committee that's been working on that. And I have a chairman with my a subcommittee for this on my Economic Development Committee, which is Gina Gagan. And so I'm going to turn it over to her and let her report to you the findings. But I just kind of wanted to introduce what we were doing today and the processes we've been through.
Hello
I feel
again,
like
Gina.
I was just here. A couple months ago, we opened, we had sent out the RFP, and we opened the responses to those, and we had 3 firms respond to that RFP, which was an RFP to quantify, evaluate any sort of economic leakage from the area, retail or otherwise. As a subcommittee, we reviewed those 3 proposals. We eliminated one as not as focused as we had hoped, and also likely more costly. It involved surveys and postage and so forth. We sent out a list of round 2 questions to the 2 remaining firms who had responded to the RFP, and we got very specific. We wanted to know what their specific experience was in rural areas with economic revival. We wanted to know, we asked very specific questions about sales tax leakage and the reliability of that given online sales and so forth. We got their responses back, so from the time I talked to you, one has gone up, but one has gone down. We, as a committee, voted to recommend to retain the firm of Lewis Young, Robertson, and Birmingham and their fee is $25,000. And so our request today is a budget request for the $25,000 fee to retain this firm, and then an additional $25,000 so that we have funds to implement their recommendations once they complete the study. And the study should take about 4 months. So, so to summarize, our request is really a recommendation on the firm after our review of the proposals, and then a budget request recommending Lewis, Young, Robertson, and Birmingham, and a total budget request of $50,000 for 2017.
Gina, the $25,000 for Lewis, Young, and Birmingham for implementation could be more. It could
yeah.
be, depending on the study, it could be any particular number, but this would allow you to at least start that process.
Right.
And hopefully get some distance down that direction.
Right. Yeah, it could end up, you know, I have no way of even estimating at this point what full implementation of their recommendations would cost, since I don't have their recommendations. But that gives us some funds to, as you said, start down the road of implementing their recommendations.
And I asked that question just so that we're all aware that we really do not know what the implementation costs will be of this study, but it would be based on the results of the study, things that we need to do to be more impactful locally for a desired growing economy.
Right. And the one thing that as a subcommittee that we have been very conscious of is no amount of money is worth it if you don't get actionable recommendations from the study. And so that's why we did the second round of questions, to really push them a little bit and make sure that at the end we will have a set of recommendations that we can immediately start taking action on to benefit the community. And I think we'll get that.
I know I was much more impressed, excuse me, with LYRMB's answers to the questions, as we had discussed that we needed more than just what their general RFQs were,
Yeah.
which is, you know, usually the case because we don't always get everything out of those that we need.
Yeah.
But the one statement that Commissioner Meller was just referring to is that they do state that would be that they would propose a fee of $25,000 to create an economic development strategic plan into the overall effect. So is that a solid number? Can we tell from that? I mean, even though they're study, we can say if we passed, we have $25,000. They need to keep us posted and monitor that in case it's less or in case it's more. But it looks to me like it's 25 and 25 based on what they're talking about.
Right. So their original fee in the from the first, just the original RFP, was $13,000, and then when we sent the second round of questions, they expanded what their recommended tasks would be and increased the fee from 13 to 25. But I had some of those same questions, so I called Jason Birmingham and asked him, you know, because again, if we don't have actionable recommendations, then this is sort of all a waste of time and money. And so I called and asked him that, and I can kind of go through some of the specifics if you'd like, but the bottom line is for $25,000, we'll have, I believe, a very focused, actionable list of recommendations, but to actually take action on that will be additional money.
Yeah.
If we
And
choose to go that way.
And
Yeah,
so in
if
the
we choose to go
contract,
that way.
so in the paperwork that we have, they don't suggest 25,000 for implementation. That's just something that Gina
Right.
is asking for.
And so just to give you the background of that, before we got the second round of answers, I was leaning towards the Nadelson Dell group. They, to me, were the most impressive from the first round. Their fee was $75,000, and I just felt it was too much to go above $100,000. So that's where the 25 came from. Is originally I thought I would be here asking for $75,000 plus some implementation money. Well, now I'm asking for $25,000 plus some implementation money, and There's no other basis behind it other than I didn't want to go over the six-figure mark from my initial impressions.
But in their letter, in their response back to those 4 questions, they did put the 25,000 in there. It's a number that's in there.
That is for their leakage study.
No, this is incorporating the creation of an economic development strategic plan into the overall effect. They recommend and propose a fee of $25,000. This would include all the tasks identified in our original proposal, plus an in-depth market analysis of an impediments, regulations, incentives, and SWOT analysis, identifying key industry, natural resources, and businesses that would fit well in Carbon County.
Right.
So that to me is their add-on.
That's adding on, but that's not implementing after the fact. That's just getting to that point of identifying.
Okay.
So I had that same question, but I believe they are referring to the same 25 for the study. They're just saying that this study will produce results that can be acted on.
Okay.
And when they increased their fee from the 13 to the 25, their list of tasks more closely mirrored the original list of tasks that the Nelson Dell Group proposed to undertake. So when I lined those up and compared 25,000 to 75,000, now we're getting the same, the same end product, but with a much more reasonable fee.
The other thing with this company, even though they're a lot less money, number one, they're from Utah, and so they understand, and they've worked with counties that are impacted by energy. But number two, their responses were very targeted, where the other company, even though they were a lot more money, were very vague in what they were going to actually give us in the end, and their experience was more university-based, more paper and research than it was actual on the ground, other than retail. So I think that was, the implementation part was really important to our county and what they could do.
And of the other 25,000, there may not be a need to use that other 25 immediately in the coming year, because there may be low-hanging fruit that we as a county may be able to act on, and then in the future, some of those harder items, we can use LYRB to solicit some of those other companies. Like Box Elder had them come in and help them solicit Procter & Gamble to come in and do some work. And so they have a lot of experience, not just doing the studies, but actual bringing the jobs to the communities. And
Recruiting
so
companies.
recruiting the
into an
companies,
area.
and they have a good record that way.
Did they give us a time frame? Because that would dictate
4 months.
What was it, 4 months?
4 months.
Yeah, they said they expected the project would take 4 months. And just to clarify, in my mind, the 25,000 for implementation may be used for additional fees to Lewis Young, but it may be used for, to use an example that I've heard you say, there's a project that the firm just wants the road upgraded, some gravel in there, was it the solar fields? So perhaps that's the low-hanging fruit, and now we would have that 25,000 to pay for the gravel, and then that firm comes. So the 25,000, it's. I mean, we'll have to make the determination at that point, but it's just seed money to implement, the most effective recommendation, really.
In a gesture to not be totally politically correct, I do have hope after the election that maybe some of the things that we experience as an energy producing county will turn around. But at the same time, we should not rest and not look at other diversification for sure. But, I hope that the new administration takes care of the EPA issues, the Department of Interior issues that we continue to fight, and also the environmental groups who stand in the way of good quality alternative coal projects and energy in our area. So That has nothing to do with what you're suggesting, but in every way
buys
it
us time.
does.
It could give us some breathing room while we pursue.
Absolutely.
this. Yeah, I have
And
the same
and I will
thought.
never apologize for the time we spend on trying to work on energy in our county, because it really is a backbone of not only us but of the nation. So anyway, regardless of whether that's politically correct or not, that's still where I stand. And I hope that if we approve something like this, that they'll account for those items too. And as I read their proposals, they're very much aware. And I've talked with some of the other commissioners that have worked with them, and it seems to be that they are very responsive to the needs of the council, or of the community, and of the commissioner or the councils involved. So
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So a question for our clerk auditor. If we approve $50,000 for this, where would we get the money?
No, it won't be till next year, obviously.
Budget's not finalized. Our budget meeting's on December 21st, so we still have some time to try to work that out. Part of the money could, I believe you could look at as part of the redevelopment agency, the Carbon County Redevelopment Agency, which does have a positive fund balance. There's no money sitting in that. I believe the study could be paid for out of that, not necessarily out of Tammy's budget, but you can pay for it out of the redevelopment agency's funds. The implementation, depending on what area you want to implement it out of, if it met the criteria for one of the existing project areas, then you could implement stuff in a project area, which would be, existing project areas are the West Price, Travel Tourism, East Price, where Walmart is, Ridge Road, Wellington. Those areas have existing project areas. If you wanted to, for instance, if the recommendation was to do something up by the airport, you'd have to create a new project area for that. We have project areas for most of the areas where we want to, or if it's something out by Halbert, you'd be looking at creating a new project area so it would fit. You can't use the money in one project area, so you'd have to create a project area to match it. But at least in the study, I believe we can, because it will definitely affect those project areas that are in existence.
okay.
So we have options.
Do you have a motion, or?
I'll gladly make a motion that we approve the $25,000 for the study with an additional $25,000 for implementation.
And we'll work out those details as we go through the remainder of the budgeting process, and I'll second that.
Seth, make a note. All right. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you for your work on it, Gina,
Yeah, no, thank you.
and Tammy. Thank
And
you.
the whole committee, they did a great job. They were very involved. And
It was a good discussion, and the recommendations, there was a lot of effort put into them, so, yeah.
Thank
I'll
you.
thank the committee members.
Thanks, Gina.
Item number 5, consideration of issuance of request for qualifications for environmental consulting firm to seek brownfields assessment grant. Tammy.
Okay. So we've had Bill Reese with the state came and did an educational program or workshop with us and taught us about brownfields. We know that's something that we want to work on in our county and at least identify what we have. But we also knew that I don't have the time or the expertise to write the grant. And so we were going to put this off until next year. And then I've talked to several people that have given the idea that there are agencies out there that would be willing to write the grant for free in condition that if they get the grant, that as part of an RFP, that they would be granted the ability to do the work and the study. So the first phase is 100% paid for by the grant, by the federal government, which is just identifying if we have brownfields in the county or cities. Phase 2 is identifying what would be needed to clean up. And phase 3, and both of those are 100% paid for by the grant. Phase 3 is a 20/80. The county cities would have to come up with 20% of in-kind and cash if we chose to move to that point. of cleaning up those properties. So my request is that we put out an RFP, that the county is the applicant, and then I've talked to the 4 main larger cities in the county, so Helper, Price, Wellington, and East Carbon. I've talked to all of their mayors and Nick Tatton, and all of them have agreed that they would be part of this. If we just did the counties, the max we would get would be $300,000. If we include and do a co-op of the cities also, the max we will be able to get would be $600,000. So it would benefit the cities, and we would be there to support the cities as well as benefit us financially to be able to include the cities. They were all very excited with the idea that we're at least thinking and coming up with ideas to help clean up the county and find out what those brownfields are.
600,000, is that for phase 1?
It's
Or
the
is
total.
that all 3 phases?
That's the total from my understanding. The application needs to be in next month, and then it would be granted sometime between May and September of next year. So if we waited till next year to do it, we wouldn't submit till December. It would be the following year when we found out, and we wouldn't be able to act on it until about late 2018. So this would put us a year ahead, but it's still going to be a long process, and it's
So-
a 3-year grant.
As a follow-up question, if 600,000 is all 3 phases, how is it split out? Because if it's 100,000 or 50,000, and then phase 3 is 500,000,
I don't-
that's a significant larger match than
Right.
if it's split out equally for each phase.
I don't remember. I don't remember that, and I know that we've met before. I just don't remember that.
So the real question, Christian, is this an RFQ or an RFP, request for qualifications / proposal, or is it one or the other?
Well, it's at least an RFQ for sure. And whether or not we're also going to ask for a proposal, I think.
Because we need to meet a deadline. We've got a very
Yeah.
short
We're
deadline.
really quick. He does have some templates that we've been able to find that he could look at, but
I looked at them, and some of them are just an RFQ, and some are an RFP also, where the environmental firm will also conduct and get going the cleanup phase as well. They'll kind of be in charge of procuring the contractor, if I'm not mistaken, and making sure we use that, whatever money there is for cleanup, that they'll handle that directly when that goes.
How quickly could we determine that, put it out? How long do we need to advertise it?
You know, we only need to advertise it once.
So,
in the newspapers.
over a
We
couple weeks.
that's right, we could open that on the first one of December.
I think if there's any other known firms that could work on it, as long as we advertise it and or have Tammy and her staff reach out to the known firms that do that sort of work and say, hey, please respond to it so we get more than, a couple responses, I think you'd be fine with that. I'd prefer to get more than one, though.
Recommend you do it as an RFP as well. And then if you decide, just the board, if you just say, well, we're not gonna go forward all the way with having to do everything, we're just going to consider, we're gonna tailor our contract to, I don't know that we need a proposal, I think we just need really qualifications primarily, and then we can determine to what extent we're gonna have to do.
it would be my recommendation that, especially where they're doing all the work to write the application, that whoever writes the application would be awarded the contract so that they would be able to follow up with the work. I think that would be only fair, but that's my personal.
Move forward with that advertising for an RFQ and RFP so that we could address that in our next, can we make it for the next commission meeting? Is that too short of a time frame to get the response back? That would be what, December 7th? That's probably if we're gonna make it in for this year, that's probably when we'd have to have those.
Let's do it. I don't know why we can't get the advertising out for next Tuesday in the paper, publicly, and start sending it out.
I think this needs to be in by the 21st of December, so it's pushing it tight anyway. It would have to be before do it
That-
on that one and not the second one.
That'd be my motion then.
I'll second that motion.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank
Motion
you.
passes. Thank you. Commissioners, item number 6, consideration and possible approval of agreements with Utah Forestry, Fire, and State Lands for new wildfire policy. As we had our work meeting today, it was found out that we should probably table this and have some of our questions and some of the agreement changed. So if you're okay with that,
Were we going to bring it back then 1st of December?
yeah, let's put it on the 7th, the December 7th commission meeting.
I'll make the motion that we table it till the 7th.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Item number 7, review and possible approval of infrastructure agreement with Emory Telecom and blanket encroachment permit agreement. Christian.
Commissioners, I spoke with Barry Horsley on this matter. He indicated that Emory Telecom would like some more time to review things. We've proposed a longer term than was in the agreement that we brought to you last time. They've said they're willing to consider that. They want to look at the contract pricing one more time if we're going to do that. So we'll bring it back to you as soon as we've got that. I don't know if we need to put it on for the next meeting. Let's see how things go and what we hear back from Emory Telecom first, I would recommend.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to table that then.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item number 8, consideration of possible approval of a contract with Attorney Sean Bryan to assist Carbon County's Office of Prosecutorial Duties.
So Commissioners, as you know, the prosecutors in the county attorney's office have requested some additional assistance to help with their workload. And they proposed that Sean Bryan, who's formed a professional limited liability company, be awarded a contract to help with that work. He's available to begin working immediately. He was a law clerk for the judges, but they've asked that he be allowed to work for the county attorney's office using some of the professional technical funds they have available for this year. It's my understanding that you had a chance to review the contract and that you're okay with him coming on board. It provides he worked for the county as a contractor and not as an employee from November 1st of this year through the end of December of next year. He'll provide 8 hours a day, Mondays through Thursdays. He'll be paid on an hourly rate of $30 an hour, not to exceed 40 hours per week. And at the end of that time, we'll see where things stand. It does say that either party may terminate the agreement by giving notice for 30 days to the other side.
Is this considered professional and technical?
Yeah,
I
it's
believe so.
professional services,
I think
Professional services.
legal services.
If anything would, this would, right?
so. That's right.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to adopt and accept.
And I'll go ahead and second that. Looking at the budget, it looks like it'll definitely handle that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item number 9, review and approval of departmental reports.
Motion to adjourn.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Keep me just as long as we get it.